without a doubt, this was the hardest thing for me personally to talk about, and yet ironically it's the one that we need to be talking about way more. There's a wee saying, now that I have seen, I am responsible, and back in February 2018 I sadly witnessed in others and experienced in myself the knock-on effect of a suicide, which as a result I'll never be the same. But now that I have seen, I am responsible, so we're not gonna just suck it up and keep going. We're gonna stop and we're gonna talk about it. We're talking about mental health.
We talked about your sister and your sister's suicide. I would imagine when it comes to mental health, you're probably way more aware about it than ever before. The triggers, whether it be within other people or within ourselves. What are your thoughts here?
I think that it's important to build your emotional resilience, no matter who you are or whether you feel like you're suffering or you're not suffering. Because I think all of us will come to points in our lives where we're going to be really challenged or might feel like a crisis point. That if you're around if you're around people who are loving and supportive and you've got a really great environment, you will still have a hard time. So being aware of your own emotional health, your own mental health, things that trigger you, is really important, and you can stop spirals in yourself or your others just from being mindful and being conscious. And I think I'm a big advocate of therapy, and I think that process helps you to be more mindful and conscious of yourself, to sort of notice when certain behaviours are beginning, or to be around what it's like to be around people who are suffering. And the truth of it is that it can be enormously draining on you. It can feel like it's never going to get better. There's nothing you can do. And I think the truth of it is, when you're dealing with somebody who is in a place of a mental health struggle, there is actually nothing that you can do anyway other than be informed and aware and helpful. But there is definitely a line that you can't cross over, because that's what would be called codependency. Mm-hmm. So you need to be aware of helping that person to help themselves. I think that's probably the most important thing, because I have dealt with addiction in the family or suicide, as you mentioned, and I think that was one of the things that I really had to learn, was not to make that person's story my story, to not own their pain and their grief as my own, and just which isn't cruel, it's healthy, because what you're doing ultimately is helping that person to help themselves, and that's what they really need. So whether you're getting them into rehab or pointing them towards a way, really there comes a point where you are going to have to stand back, and you need to accept whatever the consequences are that come after that. It's really out of your control, and sometimes that can be quite hard to accept, that you have done your best, and even then it might end up, as it did with me, in a place that you don't want it to end up. That was really difficult for me to process in my sister's suicide, because I used to think, I've hoped and prayed and I've done everything that I could think of, and why has this happened, when there were so many people with stories of great testimonies and great healings, and and I used to say to her, what about this person, read this person, and go and do something with your life, and she never will. And I just felt so devastated, I suppose, by my own powerlessness in that situation. So that was something that I had to own and deal with. That was my problem, not hers. So I guess that's learning about those boundaries, and I think I'd just encourage anyone who's in that situation of dealing with someone with a mental health issue is to be mindful of your own mental health in that situation too.
So good.
Just be careful what you're taking on and what you are owning, because it's not your fight. You can be there and you can love and you can support, but just don't cross over here. They have to help themselves, and you help yourself. So I love these things that you find online, like what I can be responsible for and what I'm not responsible for, and just keeping that in mind, and I'm sure could be a really, really difficult journey, and making sure you've got people around who can help you. Like self-love, I think, is really important as well. Don't neglect your own self-care while you're trying to be there for somebody else. That's really key. Like, don't stop doing nice things for you, whatever that might be. Don't become isolated, most importantly. I think that's really, really important. Make sure that you're not squirreling yourself away because it just feels easier. That's definitely something that I did. It felt easier not to be explaining myself or kind of recounting what felt to me like just going on and on and on and on and on and on issue. I felt very judged, and in all honesty, sometimes I was being openly judged for my family. And that can be difficult. It wasn't necessarily a pretend judgment. Sometimes it was real. And having the awareness to know where your boundaries are. You know, and again, going back to what are you taking responsibility for, what is not your responsibility for. And that's guarding your own mental health and the friendships that you have in your life and who's speaking into your life and who's really keeping like protective around your vulnerable little heart at that time. You know, you really need to make sure that you are in a loving, supportive environment, and if you're not in one, get yourself out and into one, because there is one out there for you. That would be my little words of wisdom to anyone going through that.
Thank you.
I think there's so much to say, but I think that just don't feel you have to be strong. Stay soft. That's an important one for me. Stay vulnerable, stay open to the people in your world. Don't feel you've got to be strong and just push through and carry on. And I think that just talk to the people in your world, because just being vulnerable with the right people, whether that's close friends, close family, a therapist, there are people out there who can help you navigate through this time, and it is just a season. It will change. It might not, and take it day by day. Don't just keep. And if you have to get off of social media, you don't stop comparing yourself to everybody's like highlight reel. You know, if you need to do that for you for a season, for a couple of weeks, just delete those apps, stop checking in on them, and just give yourself some time where you are not doing that to yourself. Get up, go for a run, you know, do what you have to do to not be you know, sitting in bed. And there's definitely times when I've felt like that. I'm not immune to that feeling of I don't want to go out or I don't want to see anyone. And I think actually it's catching myself in those moments of forcing myself to go for a run, which is 100% what I do not want to do. Kind of like nips that in the bud. It's not an easy answer. This isn't going to be like a template for everybody. I think the one thing I would say from my own experience is just stay connected. Just stay connected with whatever you're going through. Be vulnerable, be connected, stay soft, and don't give up. Never, ever, 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 ever give up.
Next time on the 7 series.
Not getting to the root of the problem. So it was like literally a turnover every day, just getting worse and worse and worse, but just the obsessive thoughts and not being able to sleep.